Thanks so much. As was said, my name's Lachlan Batchelor. I work for United Abroad, APHEDA, which is the aid organisation of the union movement. And as an organisation that has one foot in the aid sector and one foot in the union movement, and kind of proud to call ourselves part of the union movement, I guess that's, I think, what I can provide today, talk about today, is how the union movement and how the aid sector are responding and expressing our solidarity with the people of Palestine. But let me first start off by saying thanks to the NTEU, both the NTEU for Palestine and the Melbourne Uni branch, for inviting me here today. I'm myself a former academic worker and a former academic union activist. So because of that, I have a really deep appreciation for the value of and the importance of organised labour in higher education. And that, I think, it's really important for me to say that up front, because it's the union at the university is not just about empowering workers to take on the increasingly bizarre neoliberalisation of employment in the university sector, but it's about also empowering workers to fight for academic freedoms, and it's the tool by which we give workers the ability to put on events like today. So I think that that's a really important thing for me to say up front, is that the union here is doing a really important job, and that history of fighting for the freedom of political expression on campus includes all of the people here today. It includes people before us as well, and it is the reason why we're able to continue to do this work. And there is, of course, significant pressure that we are forced to withstand in that fight. And it's important that we do withstand that pressure, and we are able to express our resolute and unwavering solidarity with the people of Palestine, the people in Gaza, the workers in the West Bank who are being denied an entry permit to complete day labouring jobs, the only means many people in the West Bank have to survive, and Palestinians indeed here today and throughout Australia and throughout the world. It's a global issue, an issue of global justice that we find ourselves at the forefront of today. And as a non-Palestinian, I'm going to spend most of my time today giving a platform to our partners in Palestine. I want to read some messages that we've been given by our partner on the ground. So I'll progress to that. But as a former history student, allow me a moment to put this in some historical context, particularly for the union movement, which has a long history of international solidarity and also a history of solidarity with Palestine. That kind of history perhaps really kind of came to the fore in the 1970s, when another higher education union, the Australian Union of Students, took one of the first pro-Palestine stances and invited Ali Kazak from the PLO to Australia and funded his trip in the 1970s, and it continued with the 13 pledge unions in Melbourne, who funded the monthly newsletter Free Palestine that was published for a decade out of our very own trades hall. So that's a history that we're all a part of as unionists, and it's a history that I'm very proud of as well. And part of that kind of history of solidarity with Palestine is the organisation I work for, United Abroad, which was founded in 1984, and we trace our connection with Palestine to the very founding of the organisation, which came about as a result of a volunteer trip by an Australian nurse, Helen McHugh, to the Palestinian refugee camps in Beirut. She was there to provide medical assistance, part of her training as a nurse, as a worker. And she came back and saw the need for a solidarity support organisation in Australia, worked with the ACTU to establish Union Aid Abroad, and we've been involved in with projects in Palestine and with Palestinians ever since. Our first project on the ground in Palestine was in 1989, when we were part of an effort to establish an NGO called MAN Development Centre. MAN is still a partner of ours 34 years later, and it's their messages which I'll be reading to you today. Let me just say a little bit about MAN. They're one of, if not the largest Palestinian founded and run NGOs. They're a secular, non-partisan organisation that provides development assistance and training. Their mission is, and I'll read this out because it's important to get it right, is to work, quote, hand in hand with Palestinian non-government organisations, community-based organisations, grassroots groups and communities in the poorest and the most marginalised areas to promote community development that is guided by community participation, human rights-based approach, investment of local resources and the empowerment of the poor and marginalised. So they're our partner in Palestine, and as I said, we've been a partner of theirs for 34 years. It's a very long-standing and deep relationship. They had two offices, MAN had two offices in Gaza, both of them now destroyed, and 230 staff in Gaza, most of whom are now homeless. And shortly after October 7, we received requests from them for assistance so that they could begin what they saw immediately as a huge need for relief and humanitarian assistance. And so they're a partner of ours of a very long time, and that's a very deep relationship that we hold and treasure. And to me, this is kind of like gets to the essence of solidarity. Like when comrades that you work with, you've worked with for a very long time, you share a political outlook with, reach out to you in a time of need and ask you for support, you better be there to provide that support. And so that's what we've endeavoured to do in the weeks and the months now since. So they have begun their relief efforts. They've been doing very basic things like providing water and cash payments to families. They've been providing initial psychological support to children who've been the victims of trauma, as I'm sure every single child in Gaza has been. And so I want to relay some messages, if it's okay, from MAN and their CEO, Sami Kader, who has been in contact with us daily and providing some updates about the situation that they face on the ground and their efforts and how they're going forward. So on the 27th, so that's a couple of days ago, Sami said this. The foremost priority is to establish a lasting ceasefire. Secondly, securing a sufficient fuel supply is critical, given its paramount importance for individuals, hospitals, and the functioning of sanitation plants and bakeries. The current limit on the number of lorries permitted falls significantly short, addressing only 5% of the essential requirements of the population. Gaza City and the northern region teeter on the brink of famine, making it imperative to enable 700,000 to 800,000 people to access basic necessities, such as clean drinking water, food, and medication. Compounding this crisis, all the hospitals have been bombarded and are now non-operational, compounding the urgency of addressing these pressing needs. A day before, he relayed this message. We need to convey the following message in any form of solidarity with the Gaza Strip. The need for fuel to operate sewage pumps and water well pumps. More than 120,000 litres are required just to cover these basic needs. The need for fuel to power hospitals, the need for food, as over 800,000 citizens in northern Gaza, constituting about a third of the population, are still suffering from a real famine. The need for drinking water, where diseases are spreading, and there is a fear of the spread of epidemics. The need for winter clothing. The need to enable people to extract bodies from under the rubble, with estimates that indicating that there are more than 6,600 individuals, half of whom are children, under the debris. The need for specialised equipment to lift the rubble. The need for electricity, medicines and medical supplies, all of which have been destroyed. Streets and markets in Gaza and the north have been destroyed and are unrecognisable. People cannot access their homes and shops. The limited supplies entering through trucks are insufficient for a very small percentage of the population. The need for gas for cooking, the need to operate commercial lines to import goods. Both the rich and the poor are suffering from the lack of clean drinking water. Sewage overflows in the streets, and a large amount of sewage are pumped into the Mediterranean Sea. Waste, blood and corpses are scattered in the streets. This is a brief picture of the disastrous reality caused by the brutal bombardment of the Gaza Strip. So those are some words, some pretty sobering words. I mean, I don't think that the picture that they paint will necessarily be news to anyone here, but it is important, I think, for us at least to relay that those messages provided to us by a partner. And we've launched an emergency appeal for Man's relief efforts, and we've been really inundated with support ever since. The NTEU were the first union to provide an institutional donation to that appeal. They donated $15,000 on October 19. Last night in Sydney, a community fundraiser raised over $100,000, and tonight at Trades Hall we're expecting 300 or so of our nearest and dearest comrades. And I want to extend the invitation to everyone here to come along tonight. 5:30 we'll be having some Palestinian music, some speeches, and reflecting on the events today. I'll hand around some flyers for that shortly, but I'll end it there. I don't want to take up other people's time, but thanks again for inviting me to what is, I think, an important event, and I'm happy to be able to relay these messages today.